Hi there, everybody. My name is Adam Kennedy, and today I'm conducting a presentation on women's fight for equality in sport, and I'm looking to cover a variety of issues which women face in comparison to their male counterparts. The first of those is the pay gap that exists between male and female athletes. One of the biggest examples of women saying enough is enough was the United States women's national soccer team, who have been clashing with the United States Soccer Federation for several years. In 2016, 5 players, namely Hope Solo, Carly Lloyd, Megan Rapinoe, Becky Sauerbrunn, and Alex Morgan, filed a wage discrimination complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The EEOC never published a response, but the players received a 30% increase among some other alleged benefits. In 2018, 28 US women's national team players joined a wage discrimination class action suit against US soccer. Last year, the US women's national team reached a $24 million settlement with the US Soccer Federation, short of the $67 million they were after initially. However, the agreement ensures that men and women will be paid at an equal rate going forward. It's also an issue which is evident in basketball alongside soccer, as every year since the women's NBA inaugural season in 1997, the women's highest paid basketball player has earned less than the lowest paid NBA player. The most jaw-dropping comparison is at the very top. Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors is said to have been on the verge of making $50 million in salary during the 2023-24 season. In the same year, Jackie Young, the highest paid women's NBA player and Las Vegas Aces guard, was eligible for a base salary of just over $250,000, a difference of nearly 200%. Sponsorship on jerseys and ESPN doubling the rights fee to broadcast women's NBA matches is great and a decent first step, but there's still a long way to go to ensure it is at the same level as the NBA. In terms of the stats comparison here, we have the NBA revenue is that of $10 billion in comparison to the women's NBA, which is just $60 million. The average salaries, like I touched on, in the NBA, you're looking at $9.6 million, whereas in the women's NBA, it's just $102,000 in comparison. The ticket price is double of the NBA in comparison to the women's NBA, 94 in comparison to 47. And the average attendance is also reflected as the NBA, you're looking at around 17,000, 3 times what the women generate, which is 5,679. However, women's NBA sold out its very first game in Canada as the Chicago Sky faced the Minnesota Lynx at Scotiabank Arena. So why is there no Canadian franchise in the women's NBA, particularly if there was such a demand for 2 American franchises? There's no doubt that there was potential to have a 5th Major League team in Toronto alongside the Raptors of the NBA, the NHL's Maple Leafs, Toronto FC of Major League Soccer, and the Canadian Football League's Toronto Argonauts. Like everything, the primary reason as to why it didn't happen is ultimately down to money. It could have cost an expansion fee of $50 million, yet executives pulled the plug on it. However, like I say, for a meaningless match, the initial interest and support shown was remarkable. Sadly, we may not see a Canadian franchise within the women's NBA until barriers are broken. Tennis is a sport which is at least attempting to close the pay gap. According to Forbes magazine, 4 of the top 5 highest paid female athletes are tennis players. This is primarily due to women's tennis receiving more coverage than other female sports through the likes of newspapers, social media, etc. In sports such as basketball and football or soccer, like I've mentioned, women's associations receive their own independent sponsorship and media coverage, which is ultimately to their detriment. Lack of said sponsorship and media coverage equates to a lack of funding on infrastructure to ultimately allow athletes to reach their physical peak and be paid what they feel they deserve. But the gap still remains. The highest paid woman on the ATP Tour in 2021 was Gabin Muguruza, but she still received less than half of top male earner Alexander Zverev's pay packet. It speaks volumes about the fight for equal pay that in the most progressive sport in terms of financial fair play, a 34.32% pay gap still exists. Another huge discrepancy is media coverage. Over 90% of the sports journalism articles written in the print media are by male journalists, and more than 85% of coverage is dedicated to male athletes. Broadcasters see having an ethnic minority and female representation on panels when talking about sport as a tick box exercise. Jill Scott is perhaps your primary example here, given she's been on ITV, The Overlap, and even named as a team captain on Sky's A League of Their Own recently. I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here gave her a platform to create a media career, which she's certainly taken. But what does it say about her football career when she's more known for being a previous Queen of the Jungle? Bianca Westwood is another woman who spoke recently about the struggles as a female roaming reporter on Sky Sports. She acknowledged that her colleague Claire Tomlinson essentially paved the way for female inclusion on Soccer Saturday, which has seen a complete reshuffle since its inception in 1992. When speaking on the No Tippy Tappy Football podcast recently, Westwood stated Claire Tomlinson was pretty much the only female football reporter. I think the powers that be were kind of like, that's enough for now, is a damning quote. These days, you see someone like Sue Smith sat on the panel to give her opinion. She is on EA's FC24 video game, which has succeeded the FIFA franchise, as a co-commentator to Match of the Day stalwart Guy Mowbray. So Soccer Saturday and Electronic Arts video games certainly appear a lot more inclusive. Women aren't given a fair crack of the whip when it comes to coaching and leadership roles. In 2015, only 14% of all top decision-making positions in EU sports federations were occupied by women. Female coaches are statistically a minority in nearly all sports. In Europe, between 20% and 30% of all sports coaches are women. Upon reflection, women were excluded from the first modern Olympic Games held in Athens back in 1896, but that doesn't mean that we should be pleased with the current progress in sport surrounding women. If a woman participates in a male-dominated sport, they certainly face heavier criticism and discrimination in comparison to their male counterparts. Serena Williams, who is one of the most accomplished tennis players of all time, has come under fire for her looks, with some claiming that she is too muscular to be considered attractive. Men are encouraged and taught to participate in strenuous, aggressive, and competitive team sports. Meanwhile, women are steered towards more aesthetically pleasing activities like gymnastics, figure skating, and synchronized swimming. Nick Kyrgios is a controversial character, and he's escaped numerous fines for unsportsmanlike conduct, swearing, and ball abuse. If Serena Williams were to express her displeasure at certain aspects of the game in the same manner, she'd certainly be treated differently. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, the male gaze is the perspective of a notionally typically heterosexual man considered as embodied in the audience or intended audience for films and other visual media, characterised by a tendency to objectify or sexualise women. Peterborough United women are one of the latest examples of a football club having to come out and voice their displeasure about sexually explicit comments against a few of their players. The Posh had previously partnered with the hashtag HerGame2 movement, aiming to combat sexism in football. And it's great to see the club stick to their word when supporting Tara May Kirk, who appears to be attracting the most attention, and her teammate Kier Perkins. It's a sad indictment of social media and perhaps modern football that teams gain so-called fans due to a player's looks, and not acknowledging the fact that both are talented footballers in their own right. Speaking of talented footballers, France are amongst the favourites to win Euro 2024 in Germany. This advert shows some of Les Bleus' highlights in qualifying so far.
Ouais, c'est bien joué. Les gars, allez, allez, c'est pénalty. Qui revient dans la... Les bleus qu'on aime.
Yes, that's a fantastic advert from Orange, incredibly well put together, reiterating that the likes of Marie-Antoinette Katoto, Eugene Le Sommer, and Sandy Baltimore aren't held in the same high esteem that Antoine Griezmann, Olivier Giroud, and Kylian Mbappe are, simply because they are women. They all represent France in one way or another, so their talent should be showcased regardless of gender. Multiple steps have been taken in the fight for equality. Charitable organisations offer advice. Investigations like the White Review have been conducted, which can provide recommendations for sports governing bodies, but more must be done. There are two quotes that I'd like to leave you with. Firstly, Hamid Ovaisi, Managing Director and Head of Corporate at ESO Legal, claimed the issue of gender equality in professional sports is unique because, for the most part, the labour markets for male and female sportspersons are artificially segregated from one another. If male and female sports were under the same umbrella, it'd be far easier to settle disputes surrounding pay, facilities, and other resources. The second of which comes from Kelsey Plum of the Las Vegas Aces, who spoke on a podcast and stated, "We're not asking to get paid what the men get paid, we're asking to get paid the same percentage of revenue shared." There is a huge misconception surrounding pay. Female athletes don't want similar salaries, they just want the fair share of the pot that they contribute to. Here's my list of references. Thank you very much for your time.